Welcome to video clip 1.7, which concludes the first week. And this video clip is about the business process lifecycle. The idea of the business process lifecycle is that business processes traverse certain phases in typical business process management projects. And each phase focuses on specific aspects and produces specific artifacts that are used for the succeeding phase or more in general for later phases in this cycle. And an iterative repetition of the phases is often encountered, and this leads to continued improvement of the business process, something that most projects are very much interested in. In practice, there are many variants of the business process life cycle, and we've already seen one very simple business process life cycle, also already in the introduction of this course, but also later or earlier this week. And here we have presented that in the lower part of this figure, and I can use the pen to make a cycle out of it, because now we have just process documentation, process improvement, process automation, process monitoring as important relevant activities we encounter during process management projects. But what we typically see is that from process documentation we turn to process improvement. In process documentation we create business process models. These models basically show the process as it is performed today. During the process improvement step, we think about improvement of the process, which activities can be saved, which additional activities need to be performed, is there concurrency that I can take advantage of, and aspects like this. Once the improved business process is available, is completed, we go to the process automation. In process automation, we take the improved business process, we implement it using BPMS or other software systems in our IT architecture. Finally, the process is executed or runs, and during runtime, we do process monitoring. We monitor the progress of individual process instances, but we can also monitor performance parameters like runtime or cost incurred by many instances of one process model, for instance. All right, from monitoring we learn opportunities to improve the process again, and that enters the cycle, whether I go to documentation, where I document the existing process, or when I immediately go to process improvement or process redesign. In any case, the BP business process life cycle is then iterated to go for the second iteration. That's a very simple life cycle, and probably there are many life cycles out there. In academia, we use mostly the life cycle that is shown here, which is also discussed in the BPM book, and it uses a few different terms. And it is a bit broader than the life cycle we've seen before. So on the right-hand side, when we enter the life cycle here, where we do process design and process analysis. So documentation can be seen as a specific kind of design. Before documenting, we need to look at what are the business processes, what are the organizational business processes, and what is the level of process, where this beginning and the end of process or scoping of processes is a term here. So here we start with business process identification and modeling. And then we do business process analysis, which is validation, simulation, verification. We'll come to these terms in a minute. So that's the first phase we have here. Then we go to the system configuration phase, where we basically configure IT systems and organizations so that the process can be executed as is specified in the model. And so that is the second phase. The third phase is the actual enactment. So here the runtime of the process is represented, where we have the operations, where we have the monitoring and also the maintenance of the process and of the IT infrastructure that is used to run the process. And here we have the evaluation part, and here we do evaluation of the running process and see where there are opportunities for redesigning, for improving the process, and with that we go into the design phase. So basically we have here the business process lifecycle, which is a real cycle in this case, where we go from evaluation then back to the design. All right, now for each of these phases I have one slide that details what I was saying before. So let's briefly go through these slides. So analysis and design phase looks at process design first. So identification and elicitation of business processes is in the core, let's say, of this phase. We explicitly document our business processes using business process models, but we might also add performance metrics. So we agree on with our colleagues about parameters, performance metrics. What do we like to measure? What are the goals regarding the process performance in terms of runtime, in terms of cost, in terms of time that it takes to answer a customer request. These are examples of performance metrics. In the design phase, we validate models using reviews, discussions, and simulation. So validation is quite of a soft type of analysis where agreement about the process is in the center. So we need to agree whether what we have modeled is exactly what let's say we intended to model, what is useful for meeting the modeling goal. In verification, we verify formal properties. So we will talk in verification later in this course. So verification of formal properties, for instance, the absence of behavior anomalies. This is one thing we will discuss later in this course. And analysis is made up of validation, soft techniques like review, discussions, using also simulation. And verification is, let's say, verification, checking for formal properties of the process model. In this phase, there are artifacts produced, and the main artifact is the operational business process model and also the process landscape that is used to organize in which area the operational business process model fits. The configuration is basically what I was discussing in the context of the implemented business process model. So here we have organizational aspects like performance metrics that need to be implemented at that point. They have to be designed in the design and analysis phase. So here, during configuration, the performance metrics are implemented. Sometimes the organizational structure of the company needs to be modified, needs to be changed in order to allow the implementation of the improved process. And also here we have assignment of responsibilities and change management. So how do we come from the existing process to the new process? There is, let's say, a number of changes need to be organized here, and change management is a huge topic in a large organization, and this is where change management is located relative to the business process lifecycle. Related to the configuration of software systems, of course, using a business process management system, this system needs to be configured. The process model needs to be enriched with execution information, needs to be, let's say, integrated or deployed in the BPMS so that the BPMS can control the execution of the process instances using the implemented process model. The enrichment, of course, the process model needs to be enriched with technical aspects. And of course, we need to integrate applications, we need to integrate databases, we need to integrate services, and that involves the creation of adapters to existing IT infrastructures, to your existing IT infrastructure, and that also involves coding. So when it comes to software integration, we also need to code interfaces and things like this. The output or the artifact produced during the configuration phase is the implemented business process model. And here, to sketch this, to make this slide a bit more interesting, we also added this XML output or XML document related to the activity process engine. The enactment phase is basically the runtime of the business processes. So process instances are performed and execution data is collected. The execution data is very important, since when we collect the execution data, we can later check whether the process instance actually behaved or executed exactly as specified in the process model. We can also find out about the performance of the enactment and find performance bottlenecks and things like this. So we have here the aspect of monitoring. So in monitoring, we observe the progress of process instances, one process instance or more general on a number of process instances. We can identify exceptions and deviations of the process from the process model. So where were changes and why were there changes? We can find out about changes to the process. And the monitoring provides information about conducted tasks, also execution time, and the resources involved in the execution. Also, maintenance is part of enactment. So maintenance makes sure that the process runs in presence of system modifications or changes of services and IT infrastructure, IT systems while the process runs. So these maintenance aspects need to be taken care of here. And the artifact, the main artifact is here, the execution data. So the final phase of the business process lifecycle is the evaluation phase. And this phase identifies weaknesses and potentials for improvement based on the execution data that came out of the enactment phase. Here we can compare the actual execution with the planned execution using the performance indicators that were defined in the design phase and then configured during system implementation or configuration. And also process mining techniques are used here. Process mining is in academia quite a large topic in recent years. Also gradually techniques of process mining are used in industry, so process mining techniques are also used during evaluation to learn about the actual execution, to relate the actual execution to the process model, and then also identify potentials for improvement. All right, in any case or in any phase, artifacts are used as input to the succeeding phase to improve the business process model, that is during design and analysis, or to improve the process implementation during the configuration phase. So the evaluation phase produces useful information both for the design of the process but also for the implementation. That concludes the short video clip 1.7 about the business process lifecycle. We discussed 2 different life cycles, and there are many more. Probably you have seen the business process life cycle yourself already. We have these 2 life cycles that we are discussing, and here we have the first one was initially used during the introduction of this course to say, well, we need process models for process documentation. With the process documentation, I go to the process improvement. Once I have improved the process, I can go automating the process. Finally, I can monitor, and with the monitor, I can document and improve the process again. And a bit broader in scope was the academic process lifecycle, where we have design and analysis, followed by configuration, followed by enactment, followed by evaluation. And after the evaluation, I can design or redesign the process. And that concludes video clip 1.7. Finally, I like to summarize the first week of our course. We started by some fundamental definitions regarding business processes, regarding business process orchestrations and business process choreographies. We took some time to talk about the theory of modeling, and we applied the theory of modeling to process models, and we found out that the properties of models are also present for process models. We talked about interacting business processes and found that in some cases there are deadlocks, there are infinite waiting conditions between business processes that interact with each other. Organizing process models have been done, but first we discuss process models and process instances, so that for each process model there can be any number of process instances that represent the concrete cases in the operational business. Then we discuss process landscapes. These are maps that contain organizational business processes and their relationships. And finally, we discuss the business process lifecycle, consisting of the main phases that we encounter during business process management projects. And that concludes the first week of our course.